My brother thinks he's found the love of his life, but I have a feeling he's walked right into a trap. Her constant vomiting, the way she hides her belly, and her absolute panic at the mere mention of a doctor, the math just isn't adding up. Can I prove that my innocent brother is unknowingly about to become the father of someone else's child before it's too late? But why did she hide such a massive truth? How did this deception happen right under our noses? And where does this web of lies end? With a broken marriage or a tragic reality check? Hey guys, it's Sneha here. Let's not wait any longer. Let's dive right in and uncover the full details of this breathtaking real-life story. You know that one person in your life who is just too pure for this world? That's David, my big brother. If you met him, you'd understand immediately. He's the kind of guy who holds the door open for strangers, even if they are 50 feet away. He's the guy who remembers your favourite ice cream flavour from a conversation you had 3 years ago. He is soft-spoken, emotionally available, and honestly a little too fragile for the modern dating scene here in Toronto. We grew up in a house full of love, but David, he always felt things deeper than the rest of us. When he was happy, he radiated light, but when he was heartbroken, it was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. I've always been the protective little sister. I'm Jessica, by the way. I'm the cynical one, the realist. I read people's energy while David just listens to their words. And for the longest time, I worried about him. He wanted love so badly. Not the casual, swipe right kind of dating that everyone does these days, but the old school, write your poetry, grow old together kind of love. He was lonely. I could see it in the way he'd come home from work, heat up leftovers and retreat to his room. And then 3 months ago, everything changed. It started with a text. I was at work staring at a spreadsheet when my phone buzzed. It was David. Jess, I met someone. Just 3 words, but I knew. I called him immediately and his voice... I hadn't heard him sound like that in years. He was breathless, like he'd just run a marathon. He told me he was at his favourite coffee shop downtown, the one with the exposed brick walls and the terrible indie music, and he had met her, Emily. Even the way he said her name sounded like a prayer. He told me she was beautiful, not just pretty, but stop you in your tracks beautiful. Blonde hair that fell in loose waves, striking blue eyes, slim, elegant. She had been sitting at the corner table reading a book, and they just started talking. She gets me, Jess, he told me that night, his eyes shining over the dinner table. It's like we've known each other for a lifetime, not just a few hours. We talked about everything, art, philosophy, the future. She's perfect. I smiled. I was happy for him, truly, but a tiny quiet part of my brain, that protective sister instinct, whispered, be careful. In the weeks that followed, I barely saw him. He was swept away in a current I couldn't navigate. This is what we call the whirlwind romance. In movies, it looks magical. In real life, it looks a little bit like mania. David was transformed. He started dressing better. He was humming around the house. He was constantly on his phone, smiling at screens, disappearing for hours. He brought her home to meet us about 3 weeks in. I remember that night vividly. The air in Toronto was biting cold, the kind of winter chill that seeps into your bones, but inside our house it was warm. Mum had cooked a huge dinner. Dad was wearing his nice sweater. We were all nervous. When the door opened and David walked in with Emily, I understood why my brother was captivated. She was stunning. She had this fragile, delicate beauty, like a porcelain doll you're afraid to touch. She was wearing a stylish coat. Her makeup was flawless, and she clung to David's arm like he was her lifeline. Mum, Dad, Jessica, this is Emily, David announced, beaming with pride. She smiled, a polite, practice smile. It's so lovely to meet you all. David talks about you constantly. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. We sat down for dinner and on the surface, everything was perfect. She answered Mum's questions about her life. She said she was in between jobs, taking some time to find herself after moving from another city. She was vague about her family, saying they weren't very close. She laughed at Dad's terrible jokes. She looked at David with wide, adoring eyes. But I was watching her hands. She was fidgeting constantly, playing with her napkin, twisting a ring on her finger, tapping the glass. She barely touched her food. Are you okay, honey? Mum asked, her nurse instincts kicking in early. You've hardly eaten. Oh, I'm just a little nervous. Emily laughed lightly, leaning her head on David's shoulder. And I had a late lunch. I'm fine, really. David looked at her like she was the only person in the universe. He squeezed her hand and whispered, you're doing great. It was sweet, it was romantic, but it felt rushed. Fast forward another month. That's it. Just 2 months of knowing her. David came into the living room one Sunday morning, looking pale but determined. I have to tell you guys something, he said. Mum put down her coffee mug. What is it, David? We're getting married. The silence that followed was deafening. I remember the clock ticking on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. Married, Dad repeated, blinking. Son, you've known her for 8 weeks. I know, David said, his voice rising with defensive passion. I know it sounds crazy. I know it's fast. But when you know, you know. Why wait? We love each other. We want to start our life together right now. We don't want a big wedding. We don't want to wait a year planning a party. We just want to be married. I looked at him. I saw the desperation in his eyes. He didn't just want this. He needed this. He needed to lock this down. He was terrified that if he waited, this beautiful, perfect creature would realise he was just regular old David and float away. David, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. Are you sure? Marriage is a huge step. You guys haven't even had your first real fight yet. You don't know how she handles stress. You don't know. Jessica, please. He cut me off, looking hurt. Can't you just be happy for me? For once in my life, everything is going right. Please. That look broke me. What could I do? I'm his little sister. I love him. If this was his happiness, who was I to stand in the way? Okay, I whispered. Okay, Dave, if you're sure. Mum and Dad eventually caved too. They're old-fashioned in the sense that they believe in love, and they saw how much David wanted this. A week later, we were at City Hall. It was a Tuesday. The sky was grey, threatening snow. It wasn't the wedding I had imagined for my brother. No tuxedo, no big reception, no dancing, just us. Emily and a justice of the peace. Emily wore a simple white dress that was a little loose on her frame, paired with a heavy coat. She looked beautiful, yes, but she also looked tense. While David was bouncing on the balls of his feet, radiating excitement, Emily looked like she was holding her breath. When they exchanged vows, David was crying. He spoke from his heart, promising to protect her, to love her, to be her safe harbour. I promise to be yours in all things forever, he said, his voice cracking. When it was Emily's turn, she spoke quickly. I promise to be your wife, to love you and cherish you. It was standard, scripted. I now pronounce you husband and wife. They kissed. We clapped. David spun her around, and for a moment in the flash of the camera, they looked like the cover of a romance novel. The lonely boy had found his princess. The story was supposed to end there with a happily ever after. Since they didn't have a place of their own yet, rental prices in Toronto are insane, and they were still looking. They decided to move into the master suite on the second floor of our parents' house temporarily. It was a big house, plenty of room. It made sense. Just until we find the perfect apartment, David said. Plus, it'll be nice to save some money. The first few days after the wedding were a blur. They went on a mini honeymoon, a road trip up north to a cabin for 3 days. Just them, the snow and the silence. When they came back, David looked exhausted but happy. It was amazing, he told me, unpacking his bag in the hallway. We just talked and drove and looked at the stars. She's incredible, Jess. I'm glad, Dave. I really am, I said, hugging him. And I meant it. I pushed my doubts down into the deepest corner of my mind. They were married now. She was my sister-in-law. I needed to embrace her. But then the atmosphere shifted. It started subtly. It was about 8 or 9 days after the wedding. I woke up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water. The house was silent, wrapped in the winter dark. As I walked past the upstairs bathroom, I heard a sound. It was a low, guttural sound. Someone was retching. I stopped, freezing in the hallway. The sound came again, violent and painful. The toilet flushed. Then the tap ran. David, I whispered, knocking lightly on the door. Are you okay? The door opened a crack. It wasn't David. It was Emily. She looked ghostly pale under the harsh bathroom light. Her hair was matted to her forehead with sweat, and her eyes were rimmed with red. She looked like she had been crying, or maybe just sick for a long time. Oh, hey, Jessica, she croaked, trying to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. Emily, are you sick? Is it the flu? I asked, stepping closer. Do you need anything? Ginger ale, medicine? She shook her head quickly, almost frantically. No, I'm fine. I think it's just the car ride. We drove a lot this weekend. My stomach is just unsettled. Motion sickness, you know? Motion sickness? I frowned. But you guys got back 3 days ago. She blinked, and for a split second I saw panic in her eyes. Yeah, well, I have a sensitive stomach. It lingers. I just need to sleep it off. Please don't wake David. He's tired. She didn't wait for my answer. She slipped out of the bathroom and disappeared into their bedroom, shutting the door firmly behind her. I stood there in the dark hallway, my glass of water forgotten in my hand. Something felt wrong. The air felt heavy. Motion sickness doesn't last 3 days after the car stopped. And the way she looked, it wasn't just a tummy ache. She looked drained. I went back to my room, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the last 2 months in my head, the coffee shop, the rush, the loose dress at the wedding, the vagueness about her past, and now this lingering sickness. David was sleeping soundly in the next room, dreaming of his perfect new life. He had no idea that his wife was awake, sick, and hiding behind a locked door. I turned over in bed, pulling the duvet up to my chin, but the chill wouldn't go away. I had a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, a feeling that the Whirlwind romance was over and the storm was just beginning. Little did I know that night in the hallway was just the first raindrop. The flood was coming, and none of us were prepared for how deep the water would get. The morning sun hit the kitchen table, casting long, harsh shadows across the wood. Usually breakfast in our house is a noisy, chaotic affair. Dad is usually wrestling with the newspaper, Mum is clattering pans at the stove, and David is usually humming some tune, stealing toast from my plate. But that morning, the silence was heavy enough to choke on. I sat there stirring my coffee, watching the steam rise and curl into nothingness. Across from me sat David. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week, even though they had only been back from their mini honeymoon for 2 days. His eyes were puffy, his shoulders slumped, and he was staring into his mug like the answers to the universe were floating in the black liquid. The chair next to him, Emily's chair, was empty. "Where is she?" Dad asked, lowering his paper. He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the edge of concern in his voice. David flinched, snapping out of his trance. "Oh, she's still sleeping. She's not feeling great this morning." I took a slow sip of my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. "Still?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I heard her last night, Dave, in the bathroom. It sounded bad." David ran a hand through his messy hair. Yeah, it was a rough night. She thinks it's just, the travel, the motion sickness is really lingering." I put my mug down a little too hard. "David, you guys drove to a cabin 3 hours away. You didn't sail across the Atlantic in a storm. How can motion sickness last for 48 hours after the car has stopped moving?" David looked at me, his eyes pleading. He looked so young in that moment, so desperate for me to just accept the lie so he could believe it too. Some people are just sensitive, Jess. "She says her equilibrium is off. She just needs rest. She's sensitive." Sensitive, that was the word of the week. Emily was sensitive to the cold, sensitive to noise, sensitive to questions, and apparently sensitive to gravity itself. I didn't push it further right then. I didn't want to start a fight over scrambled eggs, but the knot in my stomach was tightening. As the day went on, the house transformed. It went from being a warm family home to something that felt like a hospital ward. The door to the master suite upstairs remained shut tight. Every now and then, David would emerge carrying a tray of untouched food, dry toast, crackers, ginger ale, back down to the kitchen. "She didn't eat," Mum asked around noon, eyeing the full plate of toast David was scraping into the garbage. "She took a few bites," David lied. "We all saw the bread hadn't been touched." "She says she's just not hungry." "David," Mum said, wiping her hands on a dish towel and leaning against the counter. She had that look on her face, the head nurse look. "If she's vomiting this much and not keeping fluids down, she could get dehydrated. This isn't normal for a little car sickness. Are you sure it's not food poisoning? Did you guys eat something weird at the cabin?" "No, Mum, we ate the same things," David said, his voice tight. He was washing the dishes aggressively, scrubbing a plate like he was trying to erase the problem. She says she feels like she has jet lag." I almost laughed out loud. I was sitting at the kitchen island scrolling through my phone, but my head snapped up. "Jet lag," I repeated. "Dave, you were in the same time zone. You were literally in Ontario. You can't get jet lag from driving up Highway 400. David slammed the water off and he turned to face us, and for the first time I saw a flash of anger, not at Emily, but at us, at the logic we were using to poke holes in his reality. "Why are you guys analysing everything?" he snapped. "She's sick, okay? She's my wife and she's sick and she's telling me how she feels. Why can't you just believe her? Maybe her body reacts differently than yours, Jessica. Maybe she's just exhausted from the wedding, the move, the change in environment. Just stop, please." He stormed out of the kitchen and went back upstairs. Mum and I exchanged a look. "Jet lag," Mum whispered, shaking her head. "That poor boy." "He's in denial, Mum," I said quietly. "Deep denial." The real horror show started 2 days later. By now it had been 8 or 9 days since the wedding. The pattern was set. Emily would stay in the room all day, darkness drawn, and emerge only when absolutely necessary. I was in the living room watching TV when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, heavy footstep. I turned around to see Emily coming down. It was shocking. In just over a week, she looked different. She was wearing one of David's oversized hoodies, grey, baggy, and swallowing her frame. She had sweatpants on. Her beautiful blonde hair was tied up in a messy, loose bun. But it wasn't just the clothes. It was the way she walked. She had a hand instinctively resting on her stomach, rubbing it gently. "Hey, Emily," I said, trying to be friendly. "Feeling any better?" She jumped like she hadn't realised I was there. "Oh, hey, Jessica. A little bit, maybe." She walked over to the couch but didn't sit down immediately. She hovered, looking uncomfortable. "I just needed to get out of the room," she mumbled. "The air in there, it feels stale." "Do you want some tea?" I offered. "Mum bought some peppermint tea. It's good for nausea." "No," she said too quickly. Then she softened her tone. "I mean, no, thank you. I can't. Smells are really bothering me right now." She sat down gingerly on the edge of the armchair. As she moved, the oversized hoodie pulled tight against her body for a split second. My eyes zoomed in. I couldn't help it. Emily was slim, like model slim. When I first met her, she had a flat stomach. But as she sat there, slumped in the chair, I saw it. A curve. A distinct rounded firmness in her lower abdomen. It wasn't, "I ate too much pasta," bloating. It was a structure. I looked at her face. Her skin was pale, but her cheeks looked slightly fuller, or maybe just puffy from the vomiting. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, my heart pounding in my chest, "this motion sickness, it's really hanging on her. Have you thought about seeing a doctor just to get some meds to stop the nausea?" Her reaction was visceral. Her eyes went wide, filled with genuine fear. "No, I don't need a doctor. Emily, it's been over a week," I pressed gently. "If it's a virus, you might need antibiotics. If it's something else." "It's not something else," she snapped. Her voice was shrill. She realised she had raised her voice and took a deep breath. I have a phobia, okay? I hate hospitals. I hate doctors. They give me anxiety attacks. If I go to a doctor, I'll just get worse. I know my body. I just need time." At that moment, Mum walked in from the kitchen. She was carrying a bowl of chicken noodle soup. The smell of the broth, salty, savoury, warm, wafted into the living room. To me, it smelled delicious. To Emily, it was apparently kryptonite. She gagged loudly. She clapped her hand over her mouth, her eyes watering instantly. She didn't even say, "Excuse me." She scrambled up from the chair, stumbling over her own feet, and ran towards the downstairs powder room. The door slammed, the lock clicked, and then the sound, that awful retching sound again. Mom stood there holding the soup, her face falling. She looked at the bathroom door, then at me. "That was chicken soup," Mum said quietly. "The mildest thing in the world." "She's sensitive to smells," I said, repeating David's excuse, but with sarcasm dripping from every syllable. Mum set the bowl down on the coffee table. She walked over to me and sat down on the sofa, leaning in close so David wouldn't hear us from upstairs if he was listening. "Jessica," Mum whispered, "I was a nurse for 30 years. I've seen food poisoning. I've seen the flu. I've seen vertigo." "I know, Mum." That, she pointed to the bathroom door where the sounds of Emily's distress were still audible, "is not a sickness. That is a reaction." "What are you saying?" I asked, though I knew I just wanted her to say it. "I'm saying," Mum lowered her voice even further, "that when I was pregnant with your brother, I couldn't stand the smell of brewing coffee. When I was pregnant with you, the smell of frying onions made me want to die." She looked me dead in the eye. "Your sister-in-law isn't sick from a car ride, Jessica. She's throwing up because her hormones are raging. She's protecting a pregnancy." I felt a chill run down my spine. "But, Mum, they met 3 months ago. If she's sick like this, she's not 2 weeks pregnant. She's further along." Mum nodded grimly. "Exactly." Just then, the bathroom door opened. Emily came out, wiping her mouth with a piece of toilet paper. She looked wrecked. David came bounding down the stairs at that exact moment. He must have heard the commotion. "Emily, oh my God, are you okay?" He rushed to her, wrapping his arms around her frail frame. He looked so concerned, so full of love. "Baby, please, let me take you to the clinic, please. I hate seeing you like this." Emily buried her face in his chest, hiding from us. "No, David, no doctors. Please don't make me go. Promise me." Okay, shh. much. I promise, he soothed her, stroking her hair. We'll just go back upstairs. I'll get you a cold compress. He guided her toward the stairs, supporting her weight. He looked back at us, at me and Mum, with a look of helplessness. He shrugged as if to say, what can I do? I watched them ascend the stairs. I watched the way the grey hoodie stretched over her back. I watched my brother, my sweet, naive brother, literally carrying the weight of a lie up the stairs. Mum picked up the bowl of soup. It's getting cold, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. I don't think she's ever going to eat it, Mum, I said. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snowy street. The suspicion in my mind had solidified into a rock. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a theory that fit every single jagged piece of the puzzle. The rush to get married. The loose clothes. The refusal to see a doctor who would perform a simple blood test or ultrasound. The sickness that only happened in the morning or when food was near. But if she was pregnant and they met 3 months ago, I did the math in my head. If she was showing even a little, she had to be at least 3 or 4 months along, maybe 5. My brother met her 3 months ago. The math didn't work. The timeline was broken, which meant only one thing. My brother wasn't the father. I felt a surge of rage, so hot it almost melted the frost on the window. She was using him. She needed a father for her baby, a husband for stability, and she found the kindest, most gullible man in Toronto to play the role, and she had trapped him before he could even ask the right questions. But I wasn't David. I wasn't blinded by love, and I wasn't going to let this happen. I turned back to the room. Mum was in the kitchen pouring the soup down the sink. I needed proof. I couldn't just accuse her. David would never believe me. He would think I was jealous or crazy. I needed undeniable, concrete proof, and I knew exactly where to start looking. Mum, I called out, I'm going out for a bit. I need to buy some personal things. Mum didn't ask what, but as I grabbed my coat and keys, I looked up at the ceiling towards their room. Enjoy your rest, Emily, I thought, because your secret isn't safe anymore. I opened the front door and stepped out into the biting cold. The game was on. The air in our house had changed. You know that feeling before a thunderstorm breaks? When the sky turns that bruised purple colour and the air gets heavy and static, that's what our living room felt like. It had been 3 days since the chicken soup incident. 3 days of silence. 3 days of David walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace between the two women he loved most in the world, his mother and his wife. I watched him from the kitchen island pretending to read a magazine. He was making tea again, peppermint tea. He had become an expert at it. He measured the loose leaves with the precision of a chemist, checking the water temperature, making sure the mug was warm. It was heartbreakingly sweet. He was pouring every ounce of his love into that cup, believing that if he just made the tea perfect enough, it would cure whatever mysterious ailment plaguing Emily. Mum was standing by the sink, peeling potatoes for dinner. Her movements were sharp and aggressive. Peel, slice, drop, splash. She wasn't saying anything, but I could hear her thoughts loud and clear. Mum was a nurse for 30 years. You don't work in an ER for 3 decades without developing a built-in lie detector. She had seen drug addicts faking pain for pills, teenagers hiding pregnancies, husbands hiding affairs. She knew the difference between a sick body and a hiding soul. David, Mum said, not turning around. Her voice was calm, but it had that steel undertone she used when she was about to deliver bad news to a patient's family. David froze, the kettle in his hand. Yeah, Mum? How much longer are we going to play this game? David set the kettle down with a clatter. It's not a game, Mum. She's sick. Why is that so hard for you to accept? You're a nurse. You should have more compassion. Mum turned around then. Wiping her hands on her apron, she leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. She looked tired. It is because I am a nurse that I am worried, David. Compassion is getting her help. Negligence is letting her waste away in that bedroom. She's not wasting away, David argued, his face flushing red. She's resting. She ate some crackers this morning. 3 crackers, David, in 24 hours, Mum countered instantly. I'm tracking it. I'm watching the trash. She is dehydrated. Her skin is clammy. And have you noticed her ankles? David blinked. Her ankles? Yes, yesterday when she came down for water, her ankles are swollen. You don't get edema from motion sickness, David. You get it from fluid retention, usually caused by hormonal shifts. The room went dead silent. David narrowed his eyes. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything, Mum said softly, taking a step toward him. I'm stating clinical facts. Nausea, vomiting, food aversions, fatigue, swollen swollen ankles, mood swings. David, honey, I love you, but you need to open your eyes. Stop, David whispered. Just stop. She's not pregnant if that's what you're thinking. We've only been together 3 months. We used protection until we got married. And she would tell me, Mum. The desperation in his voice was painful. He was begging his mother not to shatter his reality. He wanted to believe in the fairy tale so badly. If Emily was pregnant now and showing symptoms like this, the math didn't add up for him. It would mean the baby wasn't his. And David, my sweet, simple David, couldn't process that betrayal. So he chose blind. Okay, Mum said, raising her hands in surrender. Okay, let's forget the pregnancy theory for a second. Let's say it is a virus or an infection. If she refuses to go to a doctor, I can't force her. But I'm not going to sit here and do nothing while a young woman suffers under my roof. She walked over to the hall closet and pulled out a small grey zipper bag. I knew that bag. It was her old nursing kit. It had her stethoscope, her blood pressure cuff, a high-grade thermometer and a pulse oximeter. What are you doing? David asked, stepping in front of the stairs like a guard dog. I'm going to check her vitals, Mum said firmly. I'm not a doctor, but I'm a registered nurse. I can check her blood pressure, her heart rate and her temperature. If her BP is too low or too high, we are going to the hospital whether she likes it or not. That is not a request, David. That is a safety issue. David hesitated. He looked at the kit, then at Mum's determined face. He knew he couldn't argue with safety. Fine, he sighed, but be nice. Don't interrogate her. I'm just going to check her numbers, Mum promised. We all went upstairs. It felt like a funeral procession. David led the way and Mum followed with the kit and I trailed behind, my heart pounding in my throat. I wanted to see this. I needed to see how Emily reacted. The bedroom was dark. The curtains were drawn tight, blocking out the winter sun. It smelled stale. A mix of old air, lavender air freshener and the faint, sour smell of sick. Emily was curled up in the centre of the bed, buried under a mountain of blankets. David whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed. Honey, Mum is here. Emily stirred, groaning. David, what time is it? It's afternoon, he said gently. Listen, Mum just wants to check on you. She brought her kit just to make sure you're okay. Emily shot up like she had been electrocuted. She scrambled backwards against the headboard, pulling the duvet up to her chin. Her eyes darted from David to Mum and then to the grey bag in Mum's hand. No, she said. Her voice wasn't weak anymore. It was sharp, panicked. No, I don't want that. It's just a blood pressure cuff, Emily, Mum said, her voice soothing, professional. She unzipped the bag. And a thermometer. It won't hurt. I just want to make sure you aren't dehydrated. If your pressure is stable, I'll leave you alone. I said no! Emily shouted. She was trembling. I don't need it. I feel fine. My pressure is fine. How do you know? Mum asked, taking a step closer. You've been vomiting for 9 days. Your electrolyte balance could be off. Emily, please. It takes 30 seconds. Mum reached out with the cuff. Emily reacted with a violence that shocked us all. She slapped Mum's hand away. Smack. The sound echoed in the quiet room. Mum dropped the cuff. It hit the floor with a dull thud. For a second, nobody moved. I saw Mum's face. It wasn't anger, it was realisation. Because when Emily had lashed out, the duvet had fallen down. She was wearing a tight tank top because the room was warm. And there it was. She tried to cover it quickly with her arm, but we all saw it, her belly. It wasn't just a little bloat. It was a firm, rounded mound, the kind that starts to pop out around the 14 or 16 week mark, the kind you can't suck in. Emily grabbed a pillow and hugged it tightly against her stomach, covering herself. She was breathing hard, her eyes wide with terror. She looked like a trapped animal. Get out! She screamed, tears streaming down her face. Get out! Leave me alone! David, make them leave! David stood up, looking torn. He looked at his mother, who was rubbing her hand where Emily had slapped her. He looked at his wife, who was hysterical. Mum, Jess, please, David said, his voice breaking. Just go. Please, you're upsetting her. She slapped me, David, Mum said quietly. She's scared. She has a phobia, David yelled. Just get out. Mum stared at him for a long moment. Then she bent down, picked up her blood pressure cuff and zipped the bag shut. I'm leaving, Mum said, her voice icy. But David, you need to ask yourself why a woman would rather risk her health than let a nurse take her pulse. What is she afraid I'll find? Mum turned and walked out. I followed her, casting one last look at Emily. She was sobbing into David's shirt, but her eyes met mine over his shoulder. And there was no fear in them anymore. There was defiance. She knew that I knew, and she was daring me to say something. We went back downstairs to the kitchen. Mum sat down at the table and put her head in her hands. I sat opposite her. Mum? She looked up. Her eyes were wet. He's lost, Jessica. He's completely lost. Did you see it? I whispered. When the blanket fell? Mum nodded slowly. I saw it. That's the second trimester belly, Jessica. She's at least 4 months pregnant, maybe 5. So it's impossible, I said, the reality sinking in like a stone. It's mathematically impossible for it to be David's. Unless they met before, Mum mused. But they didn't. I checked his phone bill once just to see when he started texting this Emily. The first text was 3 months ago. So she was pregnant when she met him, I said. She was probably dumped by the real father, or he ran off. She needed a safe harbour. She found David. She rushed the wedding before she started showing too much, and now she's playing the sick card to hide the pregnancy until what? Until she can claim it's a premature baby, or until she convinces David the dates are just wrong. She's trapping him, Mum said, her voice trembling with anger. She is pinning another man's responsibility onto my son. We have to tell him, I said, standing up. We have to go up there and drag him out and make him see reason. He won't believe us, Mum said, wiping her eyes. You saw him. He's protecting her. If we push him now, he'll leave. He'll pack his bags and move out with her, and we'll lose him forever. We need proof, undeniable proof. What kind of proof? I asked. Her belly isn't enough for him. He thinks it's bloating. Mum looked out the window. We need a paper trail. She must have seen a doctor before. You don't get to 5 months pregnant without a single prenatal checkup. Not someone who looks as put together as she does. She has a history somewhere. I thought about that. A paper trail. Mum, I said, a light bulb going off in my head. The mail. The mail? She moved in here, right? She forwarded her mail here. I saw a stack of envelopes on the console table yesterday. I didn't look at them because privacy. But if she has insurance statements or old medical bills... Mum looked at me. It was an invasion of privacy. It was wrong. It was something we would never normally do. But then Mum touched the spot on her hand where Emily had slapped her. Go look, Mum said. I ran to the hallway. The console table was cluttered with flyers and letters. I shuffled through them. David's bank statement, a flyer for pizza, a bill for the internet, and then, near the bottom, a white envelope. It was addressed to Emily Thorne. The return address was from a clinic in downtown Toronto. Women's Health Obstetric Centre. My heart hammered against my ribs. I held the envelope up to the light. I couldn't read the letter inside, but the logo on the outside was enough. You don't go to an obstetric centre for motion sickness. I ran back to the kitchen and slammed the envelope onto the table. Oh, look, I said. Mum picked it up. She read the return address. Obstetrics, she whispered. This is it. Should we open it? I asked, my hand hovering over the paper. Mum hesitated. If we open it, David will say we snooped. He'll make us the villains. But if we don't, I countered, he's going to raise a child that isn't his, thinking it is. Mum, this is his life. This is his legacy. Mum took a deep breath. She reached for a paring knife on the counter. She slid it under the flap of the envelope. God forgive me, she whispered. She pulled out the paper. It was a bill. A bill for an ultrasound, dated. Mum's finger traced the date. October 15th, she read. I did the math instantly. October, I gasped. David met her in November. Mum looked up at me, her face pale as a sheet. She had an ultrasound before she even met him. We stared at each other. The smoking gun was lying right there on the kitchen table. The proof was undeniable. Emily was pregnant before she ever walked into that coffee shop. The entire relationship, the romance, the wedding, it was all a calculated lie. But as I looked at the date again, I realised something even more terrifying. If she had an ultrasound in October, that meant she knew she was pregnant, and she actively went hunting for a father. We have to show him, I said, grabbing the paper. Right now. Wait, Mum said, grabbing my wrist. Listen, I paused. Upstairs there was a sound. Not shouting, not crying. It was the sound of a suitcase zipper. Zip, zip. We froze. They're packing, I whispered. He's taking her away, Mum realised, panic rising in her voice. He thinks we attacked her. He's taking her somewhere safe. If they left now, if they disappeared into an apartment somewhere, we might never get through to him. He would be isolated with her. She would manipulate him until the baby was born, and by then it would be too late. I'm not letting him leave, I said, grabbing the paper. Not with this lie. I turned and ran toward the stairs. The paper crunched in my fist. David! I screamed. David, don't you dare open that door! The storm had finally broken inside the house, and I was about to bring the lightning. I didn't just walk up those stairs, I charged up them. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, and the crumpled piece of paper in my hand felt hot, like it was burning my skin. Zip! Zip! The sound of the suitcase zipper was louder now, frantic and aggressive. It was the sound of my brother making the worst mistake of his life. I burst into the room without knocking. The door hit the wall with a loud bang, causing both of them to jump. The scene inside was pure chaos. David was manic. He had his large duffel bag open on the bed and was throwing clothes into it indiscriminately. Shirts, socks, unrolled ties. He wasn't folding anything. He was just purging, trying to get out as fast as possible. His face was flushed, sweat beading on his forehead. Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, still wearing that massive grey hoodie. She was crying, soft, hiccuping sobs that sounded practiced. She was clutching a pillow to her stomach, rocking back and forth. "David, stop!" I yelled, my voice echoing off the walls. "Put the bag down!" David spun around, his eyes wild. "Get out, Jessica! I mean it. We are leaving. I'm not going to let you and Mum bully my sick wife anymore. We're going to a hotel." "She's not sick, David," I screamed back, stepping into the room. "And she's not the victim here. You are." "Stop it," David roared. I had never heard him yell at me like that. It made me flinch, but it didn't stop me. "You don't know what she's going through. You're judging her because she's not feeling well. What is wrong with you?" "I'm judging her because she's lying to you, Dave." I held up the crumpled paper. "And I have proof right here." Emily's head snapped up, her teary eyes locked onto the paper in my hand. For a split second, the tears stopped. Her face went completely blank, calculating. She knew exactly what the envelope looked like. "What is that?" David asked, his chest heaving. "What did you steal?" "I didn't steal it," I said, my voice trembling with adrenaline. "It was downstairs in the mail pile. It's a bill, David, from the Women's Health Obstetrics Centre downtown." David frowned. "So, she needed a checkup. What's your point? That's private medical information, Jessica. You have no right." "Look at the date," I interrupted him, taking 2 steps forward and shoving the paper towards his face. "Read the date, David. Read it." He hesitated. He didn't want to look. Looking meant knowing, and knowing meant his world would crumble. But he couldn't ignore the paper inches from his nose. His eyes scanned the document. "Service date, October 15th, I read aloud, my voice cutting through the tension. "October 15th, David. You met her at the coffee shop on November 12th. That is a month before you even knew she existed." The room went deadly silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. David stared at the paper. He blinked once, twice. I don't understand," he stammered, his anger deflating into confusion. "October? She was seeing an obstetrician a month before she met you," I said, driving the point home. "You go to an obstetrician when you're pregnant, David. She knew she was pregnant before she met you. She trapped you. That belly isn't bloating. It's a baby. A baby that isn't yours." David turned slowly to look at Emily. He looked like a man who had been shot but hadn't felt the pain yet. The betrayal was hovering over him, waiting to land. He whispered. "October. Why were you there in October?" This was the moment where the truth should have come out. But I underestimated just how good she was at survival. "She didn't crumble. She didn't confess. She exploded." "You are crazy!" Emily shrieked, jumping up from the bed. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You are a psycho. How dare you go through my mail? How dare you accuse me of something so disgusting?" "Then explain the date," I yelled back. It was a cyst." Emily screamed, tears flowing freely now, her face twisting into a mask of anguish. "I have ovarian cysts. I've had them for years. That's why I went. That's why my stomach is swollen now. I have a ruptured cyst and I'm in pain, and I didn't want to tell you because it's gross and personal, and I was embarrassed." She turned to David, grabbing his hands. "David, baby, look at me. I went for a checkup because I have lady problems. I didn't want to worry you. It's not a baby. How could you think that? I love you. How could you let your sister say that about me?" It was a brilliant lie. It covered everything: the swollen belly, the pain, the doctor's visit, and it played perfectly into David's saviour complex. David looked at her, then at me, then back at the paper. "A cyst?" he asked, his voice weak. "Yes," she sobbed, burying her face in his neck. "And now I'm stressed, and it hurts even more. They hate me, David. Your family hates me. Please just take me away." "David, don't listen to her," I pleaded. "That is a lie. Cysts don't make you vomit for 9 days straight. Cysts don't make you terrified of a blood pressure cuff. She is gaslighting you." "Enough," David shouted. He pushed me back, not hard, but enough to create a barrier between me and his wife. "That is enough, Jessica. Get out of my room." David. I said, get out. He turned back to the bag and started zipping it up aggressively. We are leaving. I'm not staying in a house where people rifle through my wife's mail and accuse her of this. My heart broke. I looked at my brother and I saw a stranger. He was choosing the lie because the truth was too painful to bear. But I couldn't let them leave, not like this. If they left now, she would win. She would drag this out for another 4 months until the baby was born. And by then, David would be so emotionally manipulated, he might sign the birth certificate anyway. I needed to escalate. I needed to blow the cover off. Literally. Okay, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. Okay, David, if it's a cyst, let's see it. David paused. What? Let's see the bloating, I said, stepping closer to Emily. If it's just a medical condition, show us. Lift up your shirt, Emily. Show your husband his cyst. Emily's eyes went wide. She clutched the hoodie tighter. You're sick, she hissed. If you have nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem, I challenged. You're married. He's seen you naked. Why are you hiding under that hoodie like it's armour? Lift it up. Jessica, stop it, David warned, stepping in front of her. No, David, look at her, I pointed. Look at how she's standing. She's guarding it. Ask her to lift it up. If I'm wrong, I will apologise. I will drive you to the hotel myself. I will pay for it. But if I'm right, David, please, just ask her. David looked at me. He saw the tears in my eyes. He saw the desperate love I had for him. He knew I wasn't a malicious person. I wasn't a villain. The seed of doubt that Mum had planted and that the paper had watered finally sprouted. He turned to Emily. She was backing away toward the wall, shaking her head. David said softly, just show her. Show her she's crazy, please. Just lift the shirt for a second so she shuts up. No, Emily whispered. I'm not doing this. Why not? David asked. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was scared. He was starting to see the shadow in the corner of the room. Emily, why not? Because I don't have to prove anything to her, she yelled. David took a step toward her. Prove it to me then. The room went cold. David, she whimpered. Show me, David said. It was a command. Emily stood there cornered. She looked at the door, but I was blocking it. And she looked at the window, but there was no escape. She looked at David and she realised cyst lie wasn't going to hold. Saw the shape of her stomach. A bloat looks like a bloat. A baby bump looks like a baby bump. The linea nigra, that dark line that runs down the stomach during pregnancy, would be undeniable. She had to change tactics, and what she did next was so manipulative, so cruel, that it makes my blood boil just thinking about it. She didn't lift her shirt. Instead, she collapsed. She let out a low moan, grabbed her stomach with both hands and crumpled to the floor like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Ow! Oh God, it hurts! She screamed, curling into a ball. My stomach, David, it's twisting. Help me. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. All logic flew out of David's head. His protective instinct overrode his suspicion instantly. Emily, he dove to the floor, gathering her in his arms. Oh God, what is it? The stress, she sobbed, clutching him. They're killing me, David. They're making it burst. Take me away, please. I can't breathe. David looked up at me, his eyes burning with hate, pure, unadulterated hate. Look what you did, he screamed at me. Are you happy now? You hurt her. She's faking it, David, I yelled, though I knew I had lost. She is acting. Get out of my way. David scooped her up in his arms. She was frail, yes, but she wasn't dead weight. She clung to his neck, baring her face so he couldn't see her expression. But as they passed me, I saw it. I saw the side of her face. Her eyes were squeezed shut, but her mouth was set in a hard, grim line. It wasn't pain. It was determination. David kicked the door open wider and carried her out into the hallway. Mum, he yelled, I'm taking the car. Don't follow us. Mum was standing at the bottom of the stairs, her face pale. She saw David carrying Emily, saw the duffel bag slung over his shoulder. David, son, please. Don't, David spat the word at her. I'm done. You guys are dead to me right now. He rushed past her, out the front door and into the snowy night. The door slammed shut with a finality that shook the house. I stood at the top of the stairs, shaking. The crumpled paper was still in my hand. I heard the car engine roar to life. I heard the tyres spin on the ice and then the sound of them speeding away. Silence rushed back into the house, filling the void they left behind. I walked slowly down the stairs. Mum was sitting on the bottom step, her head in her her hand. He's gone, Mum whispered. He thinks we're monsters, I said, sitting down next to her. He's going to find out, Mum said. He has to. You can't fake a cyst for 9 months. But by then it will be too late, I said. She'll isolate him and she'll make him feel guilty for tonight. She'll say the stress we caused made the condition worse. She'll own him. I looked at the paper in my hand again. October 15th. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In the chaos, I had only looked at the date and the location, but there was a second page stapled to the back, a page I hadn't flipped to. Mum, I said, my voice hollow. What? There's a second page. I turned it over. It wasn't a bill. It was a summary of the visit notes. It was medical jargon, mostly hard to read. Patient reports nausea, vitals stable, but at the bottom, there was a note under next steps. Patient advised to schedule follow-up for 20-week anatomy scan. Partner not present. Patient expressed concern regarding financial support. My breath hitched. Mum, I whispered. She told the doctor she had concerns about financial support. She was broke, Mum realised. She was pregnant, alone and broke. And 2 weeks later, I said, she meets David, a guy with a steady job, a family home and a heart big enough to exploit. It wasn't just a deception, it was a heist. She hadn't just stolen my brother's heart, she was stealing his life to fund her own. We can't let him stay with her, Mum said, standing up. Her nurse mode was gone. This was Mama Bear mode now. I don't care if he hates me. I don't care if he never speaks to me again. I am not letting that predator destroy my son. What can we do? I asked. They're gone. We don't even know which hotel they went to. Mum walked to the kitchen and grabbed her phone. Oh, we don't know, she said, dialing a number. But I know someone who can find out. Who are you calling? Mum looked at me, her eyes cold as steel. I'm calling your Aunt Sarah, I gasped. Aunt Sarah wasn't just an aunt. She worked for the city, specifically in social services. She had access to databases. She had connections with shelters and clinics. But more importantly, Aunt Sarah was the family bulldog. If Mum was the healer, Sarah was the fighter. If she's in the system, Mum said, holding the phone to her ear, Sarah will find her and we are going to dig up every skeleton in Emily Thorne's closet. I stood up, wiping the tears from my face. The sadness was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. David had left us. He had chosen the lie. But the war wasn't over. In fact, we were just bringing in the heavy artillery. Find her, Mum, I said. Find out who she really is. Because Emily Thorne wasn't just a pregnant girl looking for a dad. The way she had acted, the panic, the calculated lies. She was running from something. And I had a feeling that the baby wasn't the only secret she carried. The Holiday Inn Express on the outskirts of Toronto isn't exactly a palace. It smells of industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. The neon sign outside buzzes with a low electric hum that seems to drill right into your skull if you listen to it long enough. This was David's new kingdom. Outside, it had been 6 hours since they stormed out of our house. 6 hours since he had looked at me with eyes full of hatred and chosen a lie over his own flesh and blood. I wasn't there in that hotel room, obviously, but David told me later, much later, when the dust had settled and the tears had dried, exactly what happened that night. And honestly, hearing about it broke my heart all over again. David sat on the edge of the stiff hotel bed, staring at the wall. The room was dark, lit only by the streetlights bleeding through the thin curtains. Emily was in the bathroom. She had been in there for 40 minutes. The water was running, a shower, but David knew she wasn't showering. She was hiding. He looked at his phone. 5 missed calls from Mom, 3 texts from me. David, please come home. David, we love you. Just look at the fact. David, don't let her isolate you. He deleted them all without reading the full messages. He felt like a soldier at war. He had to defend his territory. He convinced himself that we were the villain, the judgmental in-laws who couldn't handle his wife's medical condition. But as he sat there in the silence, the adrenaline started to fade. And when the adrenaline fades, the logic starts to creep back in. October 15th. The date from the paper flashed in his mind like a strobe light. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to push it away. It was a cyst, he told himself. She went to the doctor for a cyst. That's why she was at an OBGYN clinic. It makes sense. It has to make sense. But the voice in the back of his head, the voice that sounded suspiciously like me, whispered, do doctors usually ask about financial support for a cyst? Do cysts have a due date? The bathroom door creaked open. Steam billowed out into the chilly room. Emily stepped out. She was wearing a thick bathrobe tied tightly around her waist. Her hair was wet, plastered to her skull. She looked small, fragile. "David?" she whispered, her voice trembling. David looked up. His anger melted instantly. This was his wife. She looked broken. "I'm here, Em," he said soft. "Come here." She walked over and sat next to him, curling her legs up. She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry I ruined everything with your family." "You didn't ruin it," David said, stroking her damp hair. "They did. They crossed a line. She sniffled. "I didn't want you to know about the cyst because I felt defective, you know. We just got married. I wanted to be perfect for you. And now I'm just a burden. I'm sick. I'm in pain. And your sister thinks I'm a liar." "You are not a burden," David promised, kissing the top of her head. "We'll figure this out. I'll get a new apartment, just us. No drama." "Promise?" she asked, looking up at him with those big, tear-filled blue eyes. "Promise?" It was a tender moment, but then David made a mistake, a natural husbandly mistake. Does it still hurt?" he asked, his hand moving toward her stomach. "The swelling? Maybe I can rub it for you. Or we can get some ice." He just wanted to comfort her. He wanted to touch her. But the moment his hand brushed against the fabric of her robe near her abdomen, she flinched. It wasn't a subtle pull away. It was a full body jerk, like he had touched her with a hot iron. "No!" she gasped, scrambling backward on the bed. David froze, his hand suspended in midair. "Em, I was just... Don't touch it," she snapped, her eyes wide with panic. It's too tender. The pressure hurts. Just leave it alone." David pulled his hand back, hurt flashing across his face. "Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to help." "Well, you can't," she said, pulling the robe tighter, doubling the knot at her waist. Just don't touch me there, okay? Please." She turned away from him and crawled under the covers, pulling the duvet all the way up to her chin. "I'm going to sleep," she mumbled into the pillow. "Don't turn on the TV." David sat there in the dark, feeling a coldness settle in his chest that had nothing to do with the hotel's air condition. They had been married for less than 2 weeks. They were on a second honeymoon of sorts, and yet she wouldn't let him touch her. She wouldn't let him see her body. She was guarding her stomach like it was a vault containing the crown jewels. Why is a cyst so terrifying, David wondered. Why does she protect it like it's alive? Meanwhile, across the city, the atmosphere in our kitchen was very different. It was a war room. Aunt Sarah had arrived 20 minutes after Mum called. Sarah is a force of nature. She's 5'2", wears power suits and has a laptop that seems to be connected to the Matrix. She works in social services, dealing with housing placements and crisis intervention. If you exist in the system, Sarah can find you. "Coffee," Sarah demanded as she sat down at the table, opening her laptop. "Black. And tell me the name again." "Emily Thorne," I said, sliding a mug toward her. "Age roughly 24, 25, blonde, blue eyes. Says she's from Vancouver originally, but moved here 3 months ago." "Thorne," Sarah muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Common name. Do we have a middle name?" "No," Mum said, pacing the kitchen floor. "But we have a clinic." I handed Sarah the second page of the medical bill, the one I had snatched. "Women's Health Obstetric Centre on King Street. Date of service, October 15th. "Okay," Sarah said, adjusting her glasses. "I can't hack into medical records, Jessica. That's illegal and encrypted. I'm a civil servant, not a spy." "But," I pressed. I knew there was a but. But Sarah smirked. "If she expressed concerns about financial support to a doctor, there's a good chance she applied for assistance. Welfare, housing support, Trillium benefit. If she was broke and pregnant in October, she filled out forms somewhere." The room went silent, save for the clicking of Sarah's keys. Mum and I watched the screen reflected in her glasses, waiting. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then Sarah stopped typing. "Gotcha," she whispered. My heart leapt. "What? What did you find?" Sarah spun the laptop around. "It wasn't under Emily Thorne," Sarah said. "That's her maiden name, or maybe just an alias she uses. I found a match for her DOB and description under a benefits application filed in September." "Name?" Mum asked, leaning in. "Emily Miller," Sarah read. "Status, married, separated." "Married?" I gasped. "She's already married?" "Was," Sarah corrected, "or is. It says separated pending divorce. But here's the kicker. Look at the address she listed in September." I looked at the screen. It was an address in a rough neighbourhood on the east side of the city, not the fancy condo she told David she had moved from. "And look at the notes from the caseworker." Sarah pointed a manicured finger at the bottom of the screen. "Client is seeking emergency housing. States she is 12 weeks pregnant." Partner is incarcerated. Client has no income. I felt the blood drain from my face. At 12 weeks pregnant, I did the mental math. That was in September. That means, oh my God, she's almost 6 months along. Mum whispered, horror dawning on her face. She's entering her third trimester. And the partner is in jail, I added. That's why she needed David. She needed a clean slate, a nice, safe guy with a salary to pay for the baby and a house to hide in. She's not just a liar, Sarah said, closing the laptop with a snap. She's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. She needs this marriage to work. If David leaves her, she's on the street with a baby and an ex-con husband looming in the background. We have to tell him, Mum said, reaching for her phone again. We have proof she's married. Or at least she was. He won't answer, I said, staring at the blank wall. He blocked us. I tried calling 10 minutes ago. It goes straight to voicemail. We have to go there, Mum said. Where are they? We don't know, I said. He didn't say. I can find that too, Sarah said calmly, reopening her laptop. If he used his credit card to book the room, give me 5 minutes. While we were hunting them down, the silence in the hotel room was becoming suffocating for David. It was 3 a.m. David couldn't sleep. The bed was uncomfortable and his mind was racing. Beside him, Emily was fast asleep. Her breathing was deep and rhythmic. She was exhausted from the performance, from the travel, from the pregnancy she was trying so hard to hide. The room was freezing. The duvet had slipped off her shoulders. David turned onto his side, watching her. Even now, with all the doubts swirling in his head, he loved her. He looked at her peaceful face and wanted to believe she was innocent. He wanted to believe she really had a cyst and we were just evil. He reached out gently to pull the duvet back up over her. He didn't want her to be cold. As he pulled the blanket up, his eyes fell on her stomach. She had been tossing and turning in her sleep. The bathrobe had loosened. The knot was still tied, but the front had gaped open. The oversized t-shirt she wore underneath had ridden up, exposing her midriff. David stopped breathing. The neon light from the window cut a blue strip across her body, illuminating her torso. It wasn't flat, and it wasn't a swollen bloat like she had claimed. It was a perfectly round, hard bump. It rose from her pelvis and curved outwards, unmistakable in its shape. Her skin was stretched tight, and there, running down the centre of it, was a faint, dark line, the linea nigra. David had taken biology. He knew what that line meant. You don't get a linea nigra from a cyst. You get it from hormones, pregnancy hormones. He lay there paralysed, staring at the evidence he had fought his whole family to ignore. It was right there, inches from his hand. Touch it, a voice inside him commanded. You need to know. His hand trembled as he reached out. He felt like he was defusing a bomb. If she woke up, she would scream. She would accuse him of violating her. But he had to know. He lowered his hand slowly. His fingertips grazed her skin. It was warm, firm, like a drum. He rested his palm gently on the curve of her belly. For a second, nothing happened, just the rise and fall of her breath. And then it happened. Thump. A distinct, sharp movement against his palm. It came from inside her. Then again, a rolling sensation. A tiny heel or an elbow shifting position. David yanked his hand back as if he had been burned. He scrambled backward, falling off the bed and hitting the floor with a thud. He sat there on the dirty hotel carpet, gasping for air, his eyes wide with terror. It moved. The cyst moved. A cyst doesn't kick. A tumour doesn't roll over. There was a living human being inside his wife's stomach, a baby that was strong enough to kick, a baby that was clearly halfway developed. He looked at Emily. She hadn't woken up. She was still sleeping, protecting her secret in her dream. Tears welled up in David's eyes, but this time they weren't tears of love. They were tears of pure devastation. Everything Jessica had said, everything Mum had said, the October date, the vomiting, the hoodie, and the refusal to see a doctor. It was all true, all of it. She was pregnant, and judging by the size and the kick, she had been pregnant long before she ever sat at that table in the coffee shop and smiled at him. David sat in the dark, feeling the walls of the hotel room closing in on him. He felt sick. He felt used. He felt like the biggest fool in Canada. He looked at his wedding ring. It felt heavy on his finger, a shackle. He stood up slowly, his legs shaking. He needed to get out. He needed air. He needed to call someone who wouldn't say, I told you so, even though they had every right to. He grabbed his phone and his coat, tiptoeing toward the door. He paused with his hand on the handle, looking back at the woman sleeping in the bed, the woman he had vowed to protect. She looked so innocent, but now all he saw was a predator. He opened the door and slipped out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind him. He walked down the long, empty corridor to the vending machine area where it was quiet. He dialed the one number he knew would answer, even at 3 a.m. Hello? My voice was groggy, filled with worry. Jess, David whispered. His voice was broken, unrecognisable. David, are you okay? Where are you? You were right, he sobbed, sliding down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. Jess, you were right. It moved. God, help me. It moved. What moved, David? The baby, he choked out. She's pregnant, Jess, and it's not mine. I held the phone tight, closing my eyes. Relief and sorrow washed over me simultaneously. Okay, I said firmly. Okay, David, listen to me. Tell me where you are. We are coming to get you. I can't leave her, he whispered, a new kind of panic setting. She has nowhere to go. If I leave, what happens to the baby? David, stop, I said. Where are you? He hesitated. Holiday Inn, off the 401, room 204. Stay in the lobby, I commanded. Do not go back into that room. Do you hear me? We are on our way. I hung up and looked at Mum and Aunt Sarah. He knows, I said. He felt the baby kick. Mum grabbed her car keys. Sarah grabbed her purse. Let's go, Sarah said. It's time for an intervention. We rushed out into the night. We were going to save my brother. But we had no idea that back in room 204, Emily had woken up. She had reached for David, found the bed empty, and then saw his phone light under the door crack. She stood up, walked to the door and listened. She heard him say, "It's not mine." Emily's face hardened. The fragile, sick girl vanished. In her place stood a woman who had survived prison husbands and poverty. A woman who had come too far to lose her golden ticket now. She walked back to the bag David had packed. She dug through it until she found what she was looking for, his car keys and his wallet. If he was going to leave her, well, she wasn't going to make it easy. The drive to the hotel was a blur of highway lights, terrified silence. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had turned white. Beside me, Mum was staring out the window, her lips moving in a silent prayer. In the back seat, Aunt Sarah was typing furiously on her phone, her face illuminated by the harsh blue glow of the screen. Drive faster, Jessica, Sarah said, not looking up. I'm doing 20 over the limit, Aunt Sarah, I snapped, my eyes glued to the slushy road. We don't need to die getting there. You don't understand, Sarah said, her voice low and grim. I just pulled the rest of the file on her husband. The guy in jail, Marcus Miller. What about him, Mum asked, turning around. He's not in for tax fraud, Janet, Sarah said. He's in for aggravated assault and armed robbery, and his parole hearing is next week. My stomach dropped. Next week? If he gets out, he's coming for her, Sarah explained. And if she's playing house with David, using his address, using his name, she just painted a target on your brother's back. She didn't just need a father for the baby. She needed a human shield. The reality of the situation shifted from heartbreaking to life-threatening in a heartbeat. Emily wasn't just a con artist, she was the desperate woman running from a violent past, and she had dragged my innocent, soft-hearted brother right into the crossfire. We pulled into the parking lot of the Holiday Inn just as the clock hit 3:30 a.m. The lot was mostly empty, covered in a thin layer of fresh snow. I spotted David's car parked near the entrance. It was covered in frost, looking abandoned. We didn't wait, we jumped out of the car and ran toward the sliding glass doors. Inside, the lobby was deserted except for a sleepy night clerk behind the desk and a figure sitting on a low vinyl sofa near the vending machine. It was David. He looked small. That's the only way I can describe it. My big brother, who is over 6 feet tall, looked like a child. He was hunched over, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. He was shivering, even though it wasn't that cold in the lobby. David! I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. He looked up. His face was a wreck. His eyes were red and swollen, his skin splotchy. He looked like he had aged 10 years, 10 hours. When he saw us, he didn't smile. He didn't look relieved. He just crumbled. He let out a sob that sounded like it was being ripped out of his chest. Mum reached him first. She fell to her knees in front of him and wrapped her arms around him. I've got you, she whispered fiercely. I've got you, baby. It's okay. I felt it, Mum, he choked out, burying his face in her shoulder. It moved. It's real. There's a baby inside her. I know, Mum soothed him, stroking his hair. I know, we're here now. I stood back watching them, feeling tears prick my own eyes. But Aunt Sarah wasn't interested in the reunion. She was scanning the lobby, looking at the elevators, looking at the exits. She was in tactical mode. David, Sarah said sharply, where is she? David pulled away from Mum, wiping his nose with his sleeve. She's in the room 204. She was asleep when I left. We need to go, Sarah said. Right now, you don't have time to pack. Just get in Jessica's car. My stuff, David mumbled, looking dazed. Oh, my laptop, my wallet. He patted his pockets. His face went pale. My wallet, he whispered. And my keys. You left them in the room, I asked. No, David said, panic rising in his voice. I had them. I put them on the nightstand when we got in. I must have left them. She has, Sarah said instantly. She woke up. She realised you were gone. She took them to leverage you. We can cancel cards, I said. Let's just go. Forget the car. We'll come back for it with the police. And no! A voice rang out from the elevator bank. We all spun around. The elevator doors were open and there she was, Emily. But it wasn't the fragile, sick Emily we had seen for the last week. And it wasn't the panicked girl from the bedroom earlier tonight. She was fully dressed in jeans and a thick coat. She had David's duffel bag slung over one shoulder. In her hand, she dangled a set of keys. David's keys! Her face was cold. Her eyes were hard, devoid of the tears she could summon on command. She looked like a cornered wolf. Nobody's going anywhere, she said, stepping into the lobby. The night clerk looked up, startled, but didn't say anything. Emily, David said, standing up slowly. He looked at her with a mixture of horror and lingering love. Please, just give me my keys, I'm leaving. You can't leave me, David, she said, walking closer. We're married. You made a vow, and in sickness and in health, remember? That vow was based on a lie, I shouted, stepping in front of David. You're pregnant with another man's child, Emily, or should I call you Mrs. Miller? Emily flinched. The name hit her like a physical slap. She stopped walking, her eyes darting to Aunt Sarah. She realised instantly who the threat was. Sarah was standing with her arms crossed, looking unimpressed. You dug deep, Emily sneered at Sarah. Good for you. I know about Marcus, Sarah said calmly. I know he's getting out next week. I know you're terrified, and I know you tried to use my nephew as a human shield. Emily's mask slipped. For a second, I saw the genuine terror underneath. I didn't have a choice, she screamed, her voice cracking. Do you know what he'll do to me? Do you know what he'll do to this baby? I needed a place to hide. I needed someone safe. So you stole my life? David asked. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. Emily looked at him. I would have been a good wife, David, she said, her voice softening, trying to manipulate him one last time. I really would have. I cooked for you. I cleaned. I made you feel like a man. We could have been happy. The baby could have been yours. You always wanted to be a dad. Does biology really matter that much? It was a sick, twisted logic. She was offering him the family he dreamed of, but built on a foundation of rot. It matters that you lied, David said. It matters that every time you kissed me, you were laughing at how easy I was to fool. It matters that I touched your stomach tonight and you flinched because you were afraid I'd find out the truth, not because you were in pain. I did it to survive, she yelled. I did what I had to do. You people, you rich, comfortable people, you don't know what it's like to have nothing, to have nobody. You're right, Mum said, stepping forward. We don't, but we offered you a home. We offered you love. If you had come to us and told us the truth, that you were in trouble, that you were pregnant and scared, we would have helped you. We would have protected you from Marcus, because that's who we are. Mum's words hung in the air. Emily looked stunned. She hadn't considered that option. She was so used to manipulating and fighting that the idea of asking for help, honestly, hadn't even crossed her mind. You wouldn't have, she whispered. Nobody helps a girl like me without wanting something. We would have, David said. Tears were streaming down his face again. And I would have. I loved you, Emily. I would have adopted that baby. I would have stood between you and Marcus, but you didn't trust me. You used me. He took a deep breath and reached for his left hand. Slowly, painfully, he slid the gold wedding band off his finger. He held it out to her. I'm done, he said. The sound of the ring hitting the tiled floor was tiny, clink, but it felt like a gunshot. Emily looked at the ring. Then she looked at David. She realised she had lost. The soft boy was gone. The saviour was gone. And now she was just a pregnant woman in a hotel lobby with an ex-con husband on the way and no money. Her face twisted something ugly. Fine, she spat. You want to leave? Go ahead. But I'm taking the car and the cash in your wallet. Consider it alimony. You're not taking the car, I said. That's theft. Try and stop me, she challenged, gripping the keys tighter. I'll scream. I'll tell this clerk you hit me. I'll tell the police you pushed a pregnant woman down the stairs. Who do you think they'll believe, the crying pregnant girl or the angry in-laws? It was a bluff, but a dangerous one. She was willing to burn everything down. Emily, Aunt Sarah said, checking her watch. You can take the car if you want, but you should know I called the police 10 minutes ago. I reported a domestic disturbance involving a known associate of Marcus Miller. They're about 3 minutes away. Emily's eyes widened. You bitch! If you're here when they arrive, Sarah continued, cool as ice, they'll run your ID. They'll see the outstanding warrants for the bad checks you wrote in Vancouver. They'll see the connection to Marcus, and they'll call Child Protective Services to open a file on that baby before it's even born. Emily looked at the door. She looked at Keith. She knew the game was over. She couldn't be here when the cops arrived. She couldn't risk going into the system. She made a split-second decision. She threw the keys at David hard. They hit him in the chest and clattered to the floor. I hope you rot, she hissed at him. I hope you die alone. She turned and ran. She didn't run to the elevator. She ran to the side exit door that led to the alleyway. She pushed the crash bar, setting off a local alarm. Wee-oo, wee-oo, and disappeared into the snowy night. We stood there, the alarm blaring, the cold air rushing in from the open door. David didn't move. He just stared at the spot where she had vanished. He looked like a man who had survived a hurricane but lost his house. The night clock finally sprang into action, running to turn off the alarm. The silence that followed was ringing in my ears. David bent down and picked up his keys. He didn't pick up the ring. He left it there on the dirty floor. He turned to us. He looked at me, then Mum, then Sarah. Let's go home, he whispered. We walked out to the parking lot. The police sirens were audible in the distance now, getting closer. David walked to his car. He opened the door and sat in the driver's seat, but he didn't start the engine. He just gripped the wheel and put his forehead against it. I walked over to his window. Dave, he looked at me. She took the ultrasound photo, he said. It was in my wallet. She took the photo of the baby. It wasn't yours, Dave, I said gently. I know, he said, his voice breaking, but for a few weeks, I really thought I was going to be a dad. I loved that little ghost. That was the tragedy of it. The money didn't matter. The lies didn't matter. What hurt the most was the love he had given to a phantom future. We drove home in a convoy, Mum and Sarah in one car, me following David in his. I watched his taillights the whole way, terrified he would veer off the road, but he kept driving straight back to the house he had tried to leave. When we got home, the sun was just starting to crest over the horizon. A pale, wintry grey light was filtering through the trees. We walked into the kitchen, the same kitchen where we had found the bill, the same kitchen where the war had started. David sat down at the table. He looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. I'm sorry, he said to the room. I'm so sorry. Mum put a hand on his shoulder. It's over now. But as I looked at my brother, I knew it wasn't over. He was safe, yes, he was free from her. But the damage was deep. He had been hollowed out. And somewhere out there in the freezing city, Emily was running, pregnant, alone and desperate. I thought that was the end of it. I thought we would never see her again. But life has a funny way of giving you closure when you least expect it. 6 months later, I got a letter. It had no return address, but I knew the handwriting. And what was inside that envelope, it changed everything I thought I knew about forgiveness. The winter in Toronto that year seemed to last forever. Even after the snow melted and the slush turned into rain, a grey fog seemed to hang over our house. It was the kind of cold you can't fix with a thermostat, the cold of a home that has seen a heart break into a million pieces. For the first 2 months after Emily ran out that side door, David was a ghost. He went to work, he came home, he ate dinner and he went to sleep. The light in his eyes, that spark of optimism that had defined him, his whole life was gone. He had taken the wedding photos down from the mantelpiece the morning after the incident. He didn't smash them or burn them. He just quietly placed them face down in a drawer like he was burying a body. We didn't talk about her. The name Emily became a taboo word in our household, like a curse we were afraid to utter. Mum and I walked on eggshells, trying to fill the silence with trivial chatter about the weather or the news. But David saw right through us. He knew we were worried he would shatter. The worst part wasn't the anger, it was the shame. David felt stupid. He felt like his kindness had been a weakness, like his open heart was a fatal flaw. I would catch him staring at his reflection in the hallway mirror, looking at himself with disdain, wondering how he could have been so blind. But as spring finally broke and the cherry blossoms in Hyde Park started to bloom, something shifted. The thaw came slowly. It started started with him cooking dinner again. Then he started laughing at Dad's bad joke. Then he started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends, pouring his love into creatures that wouldn't lie to him. We thought that was the end of the story. We thought Emily was just a scar on his timeline, a cautionary tale we would tell our children one day. But life is rarely that neat. It was a Tuesday in July, a humid, sticky afternoon. I was checking the mail, expecting nothing but bills and flyers. But there, sandwiched between a coupon for pizza and a bank statement, was a cream-coloured envelope. It had no return address. The postmark was from Calgary, Alberta. The handwriting was spidery and rushed, but I recognised it instantly. I had seen that handwriting on a grocery list once, stuck to our fridge. It was from her. My stomach did a somersault. I stood there on the porch, the sun beating down on my neck, holding the envelope like it was a grenade. Part of me, the protective sister part, wanted to tear it up. I wanted to throw it in the recycling bin and never tell David it arrived. Why open the wound? Why let her back in? Even for a second. But then I thought about the way David still looked at the empty spot on the wall where their wedding photo used to be. He didn't have closure. He had abandonment. He had a puzzle with the final piece missing. I walked into the house. David was in the kitchen making an iced coffee. He looked good. He had a bit of a tan and his shoulders weren't slumped anymore. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding tight. He turned around. "Hey, Jess, want one?" I shook my head. I walked over to the island and placed the envelope on the counter right in front of him. "This came for you." David looked at the handwriting and his smile faded instantly. The colour drained from his face. He didn't need to ask who it was from. He stared at it for a long, agonising minute. The condensation from his glass dripped onto the counter. Drip, 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 marking the passing seconds. "Do you want me to throw it away?" I asked softly. David reached out. His hand was steady this time. He wasn't the shaking, terrified boy in the hotel lobby anymore. "No," he said. "I need to know." He picked up a knife and slit the envelope open. He pulled out a single sheet of lined notebook paper and a small, glossy photograph. He looked at the photo first. His breath hitched. He closed his eyes tight, a single tear escaping, but he didn't look away. He flipped the photo over and read the back. Then he set it down and unfolded the letter. He read it in silence. I watched his face closely, looking for signs of anger or pain, but instead I saw something else. I saw peace. When he finished, he exhaled, a long, deep breath that seemed to release 6 months of tension. "Here," he said, sliding the letter to me. "Read it." I picked up the paper. The ink was smudged in places as if the writer had been crying, or maybe it was just rain. "Dear David, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it, but I couldn't let you go on thinking that everything was a lie, because it wasn't all a lie. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, David. In a life full of darkness, you were the only warm place I ever found. When I met you, I was running for my life. Marcus had threatened to kill me if I tried to leave him, and when I found out I was pregnant, I knew I couldn't bring a baby into his world, so I ran. I came to Toronto with nothing. I was terrified, and then I met you. You were so kind, so safe. I selfishly thought I could hide inside your life. I thought if I just loved you enough, the truth wouldn't matter. But lies are like rot. They eat everything eventually. I'm sorry I used you. I'm sorry I took your money that night. I used it to get a bus ticket as far west as I could go. I'm in a shelter now in Calgary. It's safe here. Marcus is back inside for a long time this time. He can't hurt us. I had the baby last week. It's a girl. I named her Maya. I thought about putting your name on the birth certificate just so she'd have a good father on paper, but I didn't. I left it blank. You deserve a family of your own, David, a real one, not one stolen from someone else. I'm giving her up for adoption. There is a couple here, teachers, kind people. They can give her the life I can't. They can give her the life you would have given her. I just wanted you to know that you saved me. Even though you hate me, you showed me that good men exist. Because of you, I know what love is supposed to look like, and because of that, I'm strong enough to let Maya go to a home where she will be loved the way you loved me. Thank you, David, and goodbye. Emily Farr. I put the letter down. My throat was tight. I looked at the photo on the counter. It was a picture of a newborn baby wrapped in a generic hospital blanket. She had a tuft of blonde hair and eyes that were squeezed shut against the light. She was beautiful, and she was safe. She's giving her up, I whispered. It's the right thing to do, David said quietly. She's trying to break the cycle. That takes courage. I looked at my brother. Do you hate her? David looked out the window at the backyard where the summer sun was filtering through the leaves. No, he said. I don't hate her. I feel sorry for her. She was a survivor doing whatever she had to do. Was it wrong? Yes. Did it break me? Almost. But she taught me something. What? That I have a lot of love to give, David said, turning to me with a small, sad smile. And that I'm strong enough to survive a hurricane. And next time, I'll just be a little more careful about who I invite to the shelter. He picked up the photo of baby Maya. He looked at it one last time, acknowledging the phantom daughter he almost had. Then he placed it back in the envelope with the letter. Can you keep this somewhere? He asked. I don't want to look at it again, but I don't want to throw it away. I'll keep it, I promised. I put it in my pocket. David finished his iced coffee in one gulp. He set the glass down with a firm clink. Okay, he said, clapping his hands together. I'm going to be late. I have a date. My jaw dropped. You have a what? A date, David grinned. It was a real grin this time. Coffee with a girl from the animal shelter. Her name is Sarah. She's normal. She likes dogs and hates horror movies. We're taking it slow. Extremely slow. I laughed. A genuine belly laugh that felt like it cleansed the last of the gloom in the kitchen. Slow is good. Slow is excellent. Don't wait up, he winked, grabbing his keys. The same keys Emily had thrown at him, now just a tool for starting a car, not a weapon. I watched him walk out the door. He walked lighter. The burden of the lie was gone. The mystery was solved. He had his closure. As I watched his car pull out of the driveway, I thought about the journey we had been on. It started with a whirlwind romance that was too good to be true. It went through a dark tunnel of sickness, deception, and heartbreak. It ended in a cold hotel lobby with alarms blaring. But here, on the other side, the sun was shining. This story isn't just about a con artist or a fake pregnancy. It's about the resilience of the human heart. We all want to be loved. Sometimes that desire blinds us. Sometimes we fall into traps. Sometimes we get hurt so bad we think we'll never heal. But look at David. He didn't let the darkness turn him cold, and he didn't let Emily's betrayal turn him into a cynic. He chose to stay soft. He chose to keep his heart open, just a little more guarded this time. And that, to me, is the real bravery. It's easy to be bitter. It's easy to shut the world out after you've been burned. But to stand up, dust yourself off and say, I am still willing to love, that is a superpower. Emily is out there somewhere, rebuilding her life, hopefully making better choices. Maya is growing up in a home full of love. And David is drinking coffee with a nice girl who likes dogs, taking it one day at a time. Life is messy, it's complicated, it's full of plot twists we never see coming. But as long as we have the courage to face the truth and the family to hold us up when we fall, we can survive anything. So, to anyone listening who feels like they're in the middle of a storm right now, hold on. The winter doesn't last forever, the snow eventually melts and the sunrise, trust, it's worth the wait. This is Sneha signing off. Thank you for listening to our story. Remember to be kind, be smart and always, always trust your gut.